Thanks so much, Katrina, Dr. O'Connor, and everyone who's joined with us for this afternoon. It's an absolute pleasure to join you for International Men's Day, first and foremost, but in particular for such an important event and a particular topic. We're talking about violence against men, but in particular men who are in intimate relationships. And it's a difficult topic. It's a difficult issue. It's not something really that's discussed enough. So it's really, really important, this event. It's really important that we're having this conversation. And I really want to thank Men's Aid for raising this topic, but for hosting this event. The organisation itself, I cannot thank you enough for the work that you do in general, but in particular over the last few years with COVID-19. It's been such a difficult time for so many people, but the focus that you have put on this particular issue and the support that you've provided to people who are in such difficult circumstances really is absolutely fantastic. Given the number that you have as well, because I know you have quite a small team, looking at the figures, you made contact with over 5,000 people last year. That's absolutely enormous, or 5,000 contacts in total. And if I'm right, you're heading towards a figure of 8,000 for this year alone. So that's an unbelievable number. I know, Katrina, you're hopeful that obviously that increase in number is for a number of reasons, one of them being that we're talking about this more, that we're encouraging more men to come forward, that as an issue it's not as taboo as it had been. At the same time, I think we need to look at the fact that it is quite an increase, and we've seen through COVID-19 for both men and women, home has not been a safe place for everybody. And I know I've said this time and time again, home was a safe place for me. It wasn't for so many people, and where there hadn't been violence before in relationships, it's now come to the fore even more. So I think those increased figures are probably two things. Firstly, more people coming forward, we're talking about it more. Secondly, that we unfortunately have an increased incidence rate in this type of violence. To try and deal with this, there are a number of things. So last year I launched the Supporting a Victim's Journey, which is really setting out to do one main thing. How can we take the criminal justice system, the process that, and it is unfortunately a process, the process that a victim goes through from the moment that they decide to seek help, be it looking up information online, going to a Garda station, or talking to a family member, or indeed if they can't, then somebody else, that when they go to seek help, that help is there, that they're supported all the way, that they feel that they can talk to someone, that they'll be listened to, that they'll be believed. And that applies to men as well, because this is not something we know from the figures. While 1 in 7 men have or will experience domestic violence, based on a lot of the research, only 5% of people who come forward are men. So there's a real imbalance there, and we need to make sure that people know that this is available to both men and women. In trying to improve the criminal justice system, it is about making sure that at every step of the process, people feel that they can come forward and that they will be protected. I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the work from Dr. O'Connor today. Have looked at some of the research, and I think what struck me most is just the range of incidents and type of abuse, everything from one single incident to 22 years of abuse. And it's very hard to believe or understand, not to believe, it's very hard to understand how someone could find themselves in that situation for so long, but it is the case, and it's very difficult for people to come forward when it's going on for that long as well. So, it just reiterates the devastating impact that domestic abuse has against men. And I just want to thank Dr. O'Connor for his work. As I've said, I'm looking forward to reading more of it. I think it will also help us challenge the stereotypes that are out there, that this can't happen to men, that, surely this isn't as bad as you're making it out. And just looking at one of the respondents, how they put it, violence against men is often played for laughs. This is not a laughing matter. This is such a serious matter. And these kind of attitudes need to change. So it's only like events today, the research you're doing, raising awareness, talking about it, encouraging people to come forward, supporting organisations like yours, Katrina, and those who work with you. It's the only way that we're going to deal with this. And I'm absolutely committed to working with you and to supporting you in that regard. My department's also committed to a number of educational awareness campaigns. As I've said, this is part of it, providing the services and the supports and the system making it work, but we need people to come forward as well. We have the What Would You Do campaign and the No Excuses campaign, which I think have been really successful over the last number of years. And I want to thank Men's Aid and all of the groups who I suppose, fed into that as to how we construct these type of campaigns. And as people will know, and as they've seen them, we have male victims as well as female victims. So it's showing that this is not something that discriminates based on your gender. It's also important with these types of campaigns that we're not just encouraging victims to come forward, but that we're showing and telling perpetrators of this kind of violence that it's not going to be tolerated, that any type of violence, it's against the law, morally, ethically, in every way, shape or form, it's not going to be tolerated, that the law is against you and that you will be prosecuted and that you will be punished for your actions. So it's really important that people see that and they know that that is the case. Finally, maybe just to touch on the fact that we are working on the third national strategy for domestic, sexual and gender-based violence. The second strategy will finish at the end of this year. There's been a huge amount of work, and again, I have to thank Men's Aid and so many others who've been involved in this, but right across government departments. So while my department is leading this, working with Minister O'Gorman on equality, this is housing, this is health, this is education, this is social protection, this is looking at all of the different areas that this can impact on a person's life, and how do we bring everyone together. And it's only that collaborative approach is going to make sure that we can actually tackle this issue. So I really want this to be the most ambitious strategy that we've ever had. I really want to make sure that the actions that we set out, we achieve them, and not only that, that we go beyond them, but also that whatever we present as a working document, that it's a living, breathing document, that it can adapt, it can change, and that it can respond to issues as they arise, as we know they certainly do. So I hope to have a draft of that at the end of the year. There'll be a really short consultation just to make sure there's nothing we've forgotten, there's nothing that isn't there, there's nothing that we need to add to it, and then it'll be published early in the new year. So lots of different strands happening, but again, specific to today, the particular focus on violence against men and intimate relationships. It's a really difficult issue, I think, for people to talk about because it's not something we've talked about before. It doesn't fit into the norms of maybe what men should be doing or what they should be achieving. And I think we need to get rid of that stereotype. We need to get rid of that issue. And we need to start talking about this because the figures, again, I go back to them. 1 in 7 men will experience violence or abuse. Only 5% of those who come forward are men. It's not a good enough figure. And I'm absolutely committed to working with you to try and increase that and to make sure that those supports and that support is there for men when they do come forward. So thank you very much. Look forward to working with each and every one of you, and of course look forward to hopefully meeting you in person again sometime soon. So thank you.
I'm going to check the Q&A box there. Minister, would you like to say a few words there, and I'll just check the Q&A while you're doing that?
Absolutely, just maybe to touch on a few of those points, and I've been looking at some of the questions online as well. I mean, the education piece, if you look at, so supporting a victim's journey that we launched last year was a follow-on from the O'Malley report, and he had 4 key areas, and one of them was education. And it's not just the guards, it's the legal profession, it's our judges, it's our mental health professionals. So there's a whole series of work that needs to happen. And you mentioned the DPSUs. I'm actually heading to the Navan one after this just to meet with the team there. Because first and foremost, it's so important that those who are in the Divisional Service Protective Units are as educated as they can be. And obviously they're very specialised in this work, but that it's across the 14,600 force that we have, or the police service that we have. So the DPSUs and those in it, there'll be training completed by the end of this year, and then the commitment is that there will be a broader training across all of the police service by the end of next year. So that's a really important element. The Law Society and the Bar Council are working to develop their own training as well for their members. And then the Judicial Council focusing on judges, you know, the fact that maybe there isn't the understanding or the focus that there needs to be where there are men who are victims of sexual or emotional, physical, psychological abuse as well. There is, I suppose, a body of work as well if we look at the elements of supporting victims' journey and making sure that men are encouraged to come forward, the educational piece and the I suppose making sure that any of the campaigns that we do, that it's focused equally on men and women. But the third piece then, sorry, my mind is trailing away from me. The third piece then to particularly focus on is to make sure that when we're mapping a typical journey, so to do the work of supporting a victim's journey, I asked all of the organisations to come forward, so Men's Aid and as well as this, to map out what is a typical journey, if you can use it in inverted commas, what is a typical journey of a person from when they seek help, they go through the process. So we're trying to understand what a man's journey might be, what it looks like, the negative responses and experiences. And we can only just see from all of the various different experiences that you've gone through, Gary, that it's not good, it's not positive. So there's a huge amount of work to do. So I hope even by reaching out, asking Katrina, yourself and your team to come back with the experiences that men are facing, that's now feeding into what we're doing with supporting a victim's journey. I think there's a long way to go, unfortunately, but can I just thank everybody who contributed, Gary, to your piece of work, because really difficult to come forward and to speak, but that's the only way we're going to deal with this, by people actually coming forward and giving their own lived experience. So just to thank everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Minister. To say a huge thank you to everyone for dialing in. There was over 120 participants today, so that's incredible. Thank you, Minister, for your time. Really appreciate it. I appreciate how busy you are, and to Gary as well for your time today, to hear directly from a clinical psychologist, you know, working on the ground. Your evidence was incredible, and the real life stories. So thank you. Minister, would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm sorry, putting across. I see a comment from the Sligo Leach from DPSU. So just to say that I'm going to come back on that. I just want to acknowledge that I did see a comment that was made there, and I'm going to follow up on that.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant.